What is up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? Welcome to episode 88 of the Be Greyt podcast. On today's episode, we have week 9 preview, which means I got my 10 game picks of what I believe to be the 10 biggest games of this weekend. Now, for clarification, I think that this weekend is a little bit kind of lackluster in comparison to what we've had these past few weeks. Obviously, we have some teams that are on byes, and look, there are still some good games and some interesting games. And I will say, usually when it seems like we have kind of a lull or a slower weekend is usually when the most things pop off. But let's get into these games. First off, we'll start with Texas going on the road to face Mississippi State. I'm not going to lie. This one I was debating within myself because my heart is telling me Mississippi State. There's even parts of my head that are telling me Mississippi State because Texas has looked so unimpressive. Mississippi State is not a team you want to mess around with. They should have beaten Florida. They already have an upset win this year against the reigning Big 12 champs, Arizona State. And look, it's at Mississippi State. It's never a fun place to play with the Cowbells. Arch has looked bad, especially on the road. And because of that, man, I got to go Mississippi State here. I believe. Look, if Mississippi State can score points, Mississippi State is going to win this game. Because I am not a believer in Arch Manning. I'm not a believer in this Texas offense in the slightest. And I don't believe that they can score points consistently, especially against a decent defense. I mean, Kentucky's defense isn't even necessarily good, and they looked genuinely awful. The only reason Texas scored a touchdown is because their special teams got them close. Their special teams got them close. So give me Mississippi State to pick up the upset on Texas. And that's probably going to be a popular upset pick by a lot of people. And usually I like to stay away from that, but I like this one here. UCLA at Indiana. I could see this one being a popular upset pick, but I'm not that guy. I got to go Indiana. I'm a believer in Kurt Cignetti. I believe that he's not going to allow his team to show up one week against a UCLA team and not be prepared and not look ready to just absolutely annihilate somebody. So I'm going to go Indiana to win this game pretty comfortably against UCLA. Ole Miss versus Oklahoma. This is an interesting one. Ole Miss hasn't been on the road much this season. They were on the road last week against Georgia. Tough loss for them. But I think Ole Miss wins. I think Ole Miss is a playoff team. I think they are a very good team in general. And I think this is a spot where Ole Miss can really bounce back. But this Oklahoma team really needs this win. This could be a really important win for Brett Venables and this Oklahoma team. This Oklahoma defense is good. And if they're able to stop the Ole Miss offense, then I think they have a chance. But if they allow Ole Miss to continue to score points, I do not think Oklahoma can keep up the way Georgia was able to. So give me Ole Miss to beat Oklahoma. Illinois versus Washington. I'm going Illinois on principle alone. Washington has been so disappointing for me this season. I thought they would be so much better than they have been. And when the team disappoints me this many times in a row, I cannot force myself any longer to pick them to win. So give me Illinois to beat Washington. Alabama, South Carolina. I don't think this is even necessarily a good game. Sure, it's at South Carolina, which can always get interesting. South Carolina could decide to show up for this one game and win. I do think there could be something that can be said that I feel like the reason Alabama and under Kalen DeBoer is playing so well is because they've had big matchup after big matchup in a row. When you look at last year and what happened to Alabama, they showed up in big moments against teams. They showed up against LSU, against Georgia. They didn't against Tennessee, to be fair. But in most of their big moments last year, they showed up. It was the games where you would walk in and it'd be like, oh, Alabama's obviously going to win this, that they would then put on a stinker like they did against Florida State. And I believe this could be one of them, but I'm not going to bet on that. So give me Alabama to beat South Carolina. I would not be shocked, though, if Alabama comes out and puts on a stinker. BYU versus Iowa State. I'm not going to lie. I have gone back and forth on this one, man. I have BYU as my pick on my phone. But I'm not going to lie, I'm very tempted to switch to Iowa State. I'm not a believer in Bear Bachmeier. I'm not a believer in BYU. I think Iowa State has been disappointing this season, but I think that they have the better quarterback. I think they have the better head coach, and they're at home. So you know what? I'm going to switch my pick. Give me Iowa State to pull off the I think it's an upset against BYU. I would assume so. Missouri versus Vanderbilt. This one I think is sneaky. Because look, I don't think Missouri's a bad football team. I think Missouri's a very good football team. But Vanderbilt, there's just something about Vanderbilt. They just consistently just play really good every single week. It's you just really haven't seen them put on a stinker. Even against Alabama, they had so many opportunities to win that game. They just let it slip through their fingers and get out of hand. I got to go with Vanderbilt to beat Missouri here at home. Michigan State. You know, I don't really care about this game. I don't care about this rivalry. Michigan State sucks. Jonathan Smith has not been the answer there. He probably, if they don't make a bowl game, I would imagine he might get fired. I think Michigan's the better team, although I don't think it's by much, but I still think they win this game comfortably because Michigan State has just been so disappointing these past two seasons. So give me Michigan. Colorado, Utah, man, I'm telling you this. If I pick Utah again here, because I'm going to pick Utah to win. If I pick them again, this will be, the third time this season I'll pick them. If they lose again when I pick them, they might have to get the Washington treatment, and I'm just not. I refuse to pick you. I refuse to pick you to win because I've been so disappointed in what I've seen out of this Utah team this year. I think they really need this win at home against Colorado. And then the big game this weekend, Texas A&M, LSU. Talk about teams that have disappointed me. Has there been a bigger one than the LSU Tigers? The team that back in January, I planted my flag. I planted my flag for the LSU Tigers, and since then, they've done nothing but let me down. Well, okay, I guess I take that back. They won against Clemson, which I said they would. I planted my flag. I said they will beat Clemson, and they did. Unfortunately, we then found out that, Clemson sucks. And then we got the Ole Miss game, which I was able to understand because Ole Miss is a good football team. And then the Vanderbilt loss came. And in a vacuum, those two losses are not necessarily bad. Vanderbilt's a good team. Ole Miss is a really good team. The problem is how they've looked. The offense at times has just looked awful. Awful. When you have all that talent, when you have a returning senior quarterback who in the preseason, he was very high in the Heisman odds, and your offense has just looked anemic at times. Then you go and you play Vanderbilt. You have so much talent on that defense, and you make Diego Pavia look like he's Johnny Manziel. It's just mind-numbing at this point. am I still a believer in LSU? It's wavering. I'll admit it. And if they lose if they lose this game, they're dead in the water. And that's exactly why I'm picking LSU to beat Texas A&M. Because I think it is a must win for Brian Kelly and LSU. It is a must win for Brian Kelly so that he can keep his job for another year, maybe, because he does still have Alabama and Oklahoma on that schedule. But it's a must win for Brian Kelly to even have a chance to keep his job. It is a must win for LSU's playoff hopes, because if they lose this game, they're dead. Absolutely dead. And they got to bounce back here. They got to bounce back here. Look, Texas A&M's offense is really good. They can score a lot of points. But Texas A&M's defense is vulnerable. Has been all season. This LSU team needs to come out. They need to score 30, and they need to hold Texas A&M to about 20. That's what I need to see. This LSU defense is good enough to stop this Texas A&M offense. That LSU offense is absolutely good enough to score against this weak Texas A&M defense. I don't want to have to turn on that game and see KC Concepcion having 8 catches, 160 yards, and 2 touchdowns. If I see that, I'm going to crash out. Or Marcel Reed having a 70% completion percentage. He's ran for like 80 yards. He's the next coming of Lamar Jackson. I cannot see that, okay? I can't. Because if I do, I'm going to be back here on Tuesday just completely crashing out about LSU. Even more so if we haven't gotten the news yet that Brian Kelly's been fired. Okay? And I'll tell you this. There should be no bigger fan of LSU this weekend than a Florida fan. Because I'm telling you now, LSU is the one team that has the potential to fire their coach this year, and then they could potentially steal Lane Kiffin. They're the only obstacle, unless Lane just wants to stay at Ole Miss, in which case would be a disaster for Florida. Not saying there aren't any other good coaches. That's not what I'm saying. But I am not convinced. Let's say Lane says, I want to stay at Ole Miss, right? Sure, you could go get an Eli Drinkwitz, but I think we would all be lying to ourselves if we said that Eli Drinkwitz would be a little underwhelming. We all know that Dan Lanning's name would pop up. I'm still not convinced he would leave Oregon for Florida. I'm not convinced of that. Maybe he would. Florida is a better job, in my opinion. But I just, again, I don't know if he would. Because he has a really good thing going at Oregon. That's why it's Lane Kiffin or bust. You're not going to bring in James Franklin to Florida. That would be an utter disaster. You're not, just like you wouldn't bring James Franklin into LSU. James Franklin needs to go to like a Michigan State if they fire Jonathan Smith, or Virginia Tech. That is where James Franklin should go. The fact that Hugh Freeze hasn't been fired from Auburn yet is astounding. The fact that Florida State said they're going to let Mike Norvell ride out the season, what a joke. Mike Norvell sucks. Mike Norvell is terrible. Why does he get to coach out the rest of the season? For what purpose? That's you basically telling us you're going to fire him, just not right now. Like, what? You might as well just go ahead and fire him. Sorry, I just went off on a tangent because I just don't understand why Hugh Freeze still has a job. I don't understand why Mike Norvell still has a job. I just don't get it. I don't get it. And you got the report of Florida initially called Marcus Freeman, and he immediately said no. Oh, man. I think Marcus Freeman at Florida would be interesting. But again, I still feel like Lane Kiffin's the right answer. Because Marcus Freeman, I think he is a good coach in the aspect of I think he could get really good recruits there. He can recruit really well. I think he would do really good in the transfer portal. I think your defense would be really good every single year. But what I have seen from Notre Dame offensively year after year under Marcus leaves a lot to be desired. And Notre Dame under Marcus Freeman just has these games that are just like you're watching and you're like, what is going on? Like, what are they doing? Like the Northern Illinois game, like the Marshall game. And that can't happen at Florida. We just saw it against South Florida, actually. Now, he's way better than Billy Napier, but still. But I understand why they called Marcus Freeman. I don't think they should be shocked that he said no. That was always going to be a long shot. Marcus Freeman has a very good thing going over at Notre Dame, where he doesn't have to play the likes of LSU and Georgia and SEC, high SEC opponents every single year. He can be an independent and just face his face USC. But that's my Week 9 preview. I tell you what. Brian Kelly, LSU, for y'all's sake, y'all better win. For y'all's sake, y'all better win on Saturday. Or else you will be hearing from me on Tuesday. You will be hearing. I say that. I say that like they even listen to this. They obviously don't, but still. It makes me feel better if I pretend that they do. Anywho, I hope you all enjoy your week. I hope you all enjoy this Week 9 of college football this weekend. It's going to be a fun one. There has the potential to be a lot of upsets, as there is every single week. That's why we love this game, this sport. That's why we love college football, It's what makes it so unique. But I hope you all enjoy your Thursdays. It's at least where I am. It's a beautiful day outside. Feels great. Do not forget to go out there and be great.